Well, apparently you guys really liked my video on Persona's bad endings, so I guess now I'm obligated to make a video on Persona's good endings. Another common thread that the Persona games share is that they're all very highly regarded in large part due to their endings. That is, their best endings. I agree with this sentiment. Even in my least favorite entries, I can at least agree that the endings are pretty good. Persona games, while typically kind of backloaded in terms of plot, tend to be like snowballs that keep rolling and getting bigger, leading up to a satisfying conclusion. They also do a good job making you feel rewarded for the time you put into them, and now I'm going to be looking at each of them, for fun. Like the bad endings video, I'm going to be going through the main series titles only. I haven't played every spin-off, and quite frankly don't care enough to talk about them. I'll give a general summary of each ending and give my general thoughts and impressions. This will mainly be based on how well it ties up the plot, how well it conveys the themes of the game, and how fulfilled I felt by it personally. Of course, spoilers for the entire series, obviously. Go play the games first. So as established in the story, the Maki in the protagonist's group is a fragment of the real Maki's mind. She is the ideal version of Maki that exists within the fictional comfort world inside her mind, as a result of the real Maki's jealousy and resentment of her peers, while she remained cooped up at the hospital. While SEBEC was working on building a Deva system to alter the world and achieve godhood, her mind synced with it for no real concrete reason, and basically caused the catastrophe that befell Mikagecho. Choosing the wrong choices at one specific part of the game can lock you into a really underwhelming bad ending. However, if the player stays steadfast, determined to fight for everyone's sake and find his own meaning in life, you will be able to proceed to the final dungeon and get the good ending. Ideal Maki will return to her world of her own will, and you will have to go back in after her to give her a little pep talk. Maki comes to the realization that she can't keep blaming herself for what happened or how she felt. When the ideal Maki meets the real Maki within the sea of unconsciousness, she reprimands her real self for not even making the effort to change and let go of her bitterness. She reminds herself that looking at her friends makes her feel like anything is possible. And with that, the final key item needed to reach the final dungeon is relinquished. After the death of Kondori, Aki, Maki's malevolent side, attempts to open Pandora's box to destroy the world with the Deva system out of despair. Aki becomes part of Pandora and the final fight commences. After the battle, Maki defeats her inner doom and gloom and sends everyone back to the real world. The ideal Maki bids farewell, as she is part of the real Maki and cannot take her place. Philemon congratulates everyone for finding their true selves, and that no matter what kind of hardships they face in the future, they will have the resolve to face them. Sometime after the incident, everyone's celebrating their graduation. The ones involved with the SEBEC incident meet up, and we see that the real Maki has made a full recovery. She's never been more bright and energetic. Before leaving, Nanjo recalls the last thing that was inside Pandora's box. Huh. What was the last thing in Pandora's box? Let me check. Oh, okay. This ending outlines what Persona is really all about. Initially, Maki wallows in how her repressed negativity and resentment caused so much trouble. She ran away thinking that everyone would hate her for it. Her friends came through for her though, and she acknowledged that the reason this happened was because she kept hiding in her ideal world. She comes to terms with her selfishness and becomes a more optimistic person because of it. In a way, she became the ideal self that she wanted to be. And we can all become the better person we want to be if we take an honest look at ourselves and make the effort to make that happen. I'll be honest, this game doesn't go as in-depth with these ideas as much as I would have liked. I had to think for a bit about what exactly they were trying to get across. The conversation between ideal Maki and real Maki was really short, and while I understood what she was trying to say, it kinda just felt like she was saying get over it and cope. But once you line everything up with basic Jungian psychology principles, it's actually a pretty well-crafted story with an ending that ties it up neatly. I might even like this ending more than a couple other endings in this series, but this is far from the peak in my opinion. We still have a long way to go. Persona 1 offers a completely separate story scenario if very specific actions are taken. This one revolves around a cursed Snow Queen mask, and you take on 3 towers in any order you want. However, in order to free your teacher Ms. Sayako from the spirit possessing the mask, you must collect enough demon mirror shards spread throughout the dungeons so the mirror can create a clear reflection of her. Some mirror shards are missable, so if you do not have enough, you will be locked into the bad ending. If you obtain at least 8 mirror shards, the spirit possessing the mask will be released. The spirit was a girl named Tomomi, Sayako's friend when she was in drama club, and the last person to be cursed by the Snow Queen's mask. It turns out they were both competing for the role of Snow Queen at the time. Tomomi seemingly won out the role, with Sayako congratulating her and trying to assure her that the curse of the mask isn't real. As it turns out though, Tomomi only got the role because Sayako backed out. A rumor started spreading that Sayako only bailed because she wanted to avoid the curse of the mask. Tomomi's face was burned by the mask. Yeah, that's one hell of a grudge. Sayako feels that deep down, maybe she did think she was better than Tomomi, and that she was nice because that's the image she kind of built up for herself. Revealing the mask's reflection also freed Tomomi's persona, the Night Queen, who declares to bring down eternal night on the world. For those not in the know-how, the Night Queen is also known as Nyx. Remember her for later. If the player manages to collect all 12 demon mirror shards, Tomomi's spirit will thank you by transforming it into the Spiegel shield. It's a piece of arm gear for the protagonist. She will also tell the player where they can find the hero's costume for the Snow Queen play, which is the ultimate set of equipment for the player. The door to the final dungeon is now open. You might have noticed that Maki has not really been relevant to this story route at all so far. What happened? They set up a plotline about a sickly girl and then swept it to the side. Well, she actually does make an appearance in this route, but not as a playable character. So somewhere in the final dungeon you can actually encounter a masked Maki painting a canvas black. She says she's painting over the future with blackness. She is clearly resentful of you and your friends who have each other, while she is always alone, watching everyone else be happy. Sound familiar? You also encounter Maki's shadow. Aki is trying to find a younger version of Kandori wearing your uniform and a mask. Mai asks if you've seen herself. So yeah, I think the implication is that this whole ice castle is also related to Kandori's Deva system. The young Kandori only states that this is a byproduct of her heart. Perhaps while Maki escaped into her dream world, she also wished for the real world to be destroyed out of hatred and inadvertently called upon the Night Queen to do so. It's not made entirely clear, but that's the most sense I can make out of it. Oh yeah, this final boss is also kind of a joke compared to Pandora. I had a much easier time with it. After the battle, Kandori says he feels you will meet each other again, and then he and Maki dip. The school defrosts and the sun shines again over Mikagecho. The gang decide to go out and find Maki and Mark, who are actually seen leaving right before the school freezes over. Glad they remembered that. You get a post-credits scene of Mark approaching you at the gates of school. Turns out he went to the SEBEC building with Maki after they left the school and Maki was captured. Mark asks for your help, and everyone heads off to the SEBEC building together to rescue her. Okay. Maybe I should have covered this ending before the SEBEC one. Realistically though, most people are going to be doing the SEBEC route first, and the Snow Queen route works better if you already know what happened in the SEBEC route for context. For those of you who watched my bad endings video, you'll remember I said I liked the bad ending of the Snow Queen route better than the bad ending of SEBEC. This time, it's the opposite. The SEBEC ending really ties all the Jungian psychology themes together, while the Snow Queen route mostly just serves to tie back into the main story. It's a neat tie-in, but doesn't leave as much of an impression on me personally. For what it's worth, I think the SEBEC and Snow Queen stories are about equally as good overall. Inevitably though, they're going to outdo each other in some areas. There is one thing about the Snow Queen ending that sticks with me though. Eternal night will fall again, so long as people seek to turn hope into despair. Persona 2 Innocent Sin really only has one ending. There's no good or bad ending, largely because this game's ending is a bittersweet one. So the game gives you an unsubtle prophecy saying that Maya's death basically means the end of the world. I want you to take a wild guess what happens. Yeah. You also find out that this entire game was orchestrated as part of a bet between Philemon and Nyarlathotep to test humanity. Don't you just love when higher beings wager on the lives of regular people? But nonetheless, I do think everything else about this ending is done really well. The music really sets in the hopelessness of the situation, as even casting healing spells isn't working. Maya's a goner. Philemon offers you the chance to erase the day Tatsuya and his friends all met, which was the catalyst for everything happening. Obviously, this is a painful decision to make, but it's the only way to save Maya. Oh, and the world, I guess. Before Tatsuya crosses to the other side, Philemon asks if you have any last words, and the game gives you the option to punch him. I mean, yeah, the jackass deserves it. His mask falls off, revealing that he is the spitting image of Tatsuya. Philemon says he'll always be watching over you, and then everyone transmigrates. You catch a glimpse of everyone living their new peaceful lives with no memory of what happened in the other timeline. But they all happen to run into each other on the same exact street, and the game ends right there. So Philemon resembling Tatsuya references back to Jungian psychology. In both Persona 1 and 2, Philemon serves as a sort of figure of guidance for the group, just as he did in Carl Jung's dreams. Philemon, for the most part, does not directly interfere with the events taking place as he is unable to, but still oversees humanity and their development. I am you. You are me. I am always with you, watching over you. The cause of Maya's death was the holy spear that pierced Jesus. It was passed down by legend that he would not stop bleeding when he was stabbed by that spear. At the start of the game, it's established that rumors are becoming reality, and it remains that way throughout the entire story. In a way, a legend is just a glorified rumor. So it follows that the spear that pierced Christ would also come into existence. Rumors were the cause of this catastrophe. Essentially, this means that humanity caused their own fall because they were consumed by their own lies and propaganda. Just like in real life. Considering how much misery these characters go through in this game, I think letting them all meet again in the next life was well deserved. Honestly, this ending wraps things up pretty nicely. My only complaint is that it goes by a little too quickly. You could theoretically end the story right here, but there's still more to go. Eternal Punishment also only has one ending, like its predecessor. After defeating Nyarlathotep, he warns everyone that he is the dark side of human consciousness, and will always have the potential to return. Maya and Tatsuya then brutalize him, and then he's finally defeated. There's only one thing left that needs to be fixed. The Tatsuya from the original timeline is the paradox that upset the balance of the world. He, along with Lisa, Akechi, and Jun, transmigrated their souls into the bodies of their counterparts here. The Tatsuya from the other side has basically been occupying the body of this side's Tatsuya, and now must return. It's here that the player can choose Maya's last words for him. So, I didn't actually know that if you chose the first dialogue option, Tatsuya would kiss Maya, and then he knocks her unconscious. Baofu tells Tatsuya that despite the non-stop hardships of adulthood, there will still be some good things in life to experience. Tatsuya then says that they are all connected by the sea of unconsciousness, and that they may be able to meet again. Afterwards, Baofu and Ulala start a business finding missing people together. The Persona 1 cast have a reunion. It's implied the Persona 1 protagonist arrives too, but they do not reveal his appearance. Akechi, Lisa, and Jun visit the Alaya Shrine, feeling as though they've forgotten something important, and feel an unexplainable sadness. The Tatsuya of this side shows interest in following Katsuya's footsteps, sort of mending their relationship. And Maya is just living out her days normally. She spots Tatsuya on his motorcycle while crossing the street, and smiles as she passes by him. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment centers around an adult cast and adult struggles. Throughout the game, you get a glimpse of everyone's hardships in life. Then you've got Tatsuya, an 18-year-old boy who is only beginning to learn what being an adult entails. A large part of that is taking on huge responsibilities. Tatsuya refusing to let go of his memory of Innocent Sin's timeline is what led to the current timeline being in danger. He carries the huge burden of both restoring order to the current timeline and returning to Innocent Sin's timeline to help rebuild the world there. But those things are no longer something that Tatsuya fears. He returns to his world optimistic that the world they create on the other side will flourish. In the end of Innocent Sin, Philemon reminds the player that he is always watching over them, and that you and him are one and the same. Nyarlathotep does something similar, saying that he's the shadow of all humanity, and that he will never truly be gone. Everyone is aware and accepts that. The darker aspects of us are still integral to who we are, and acknowledging them is the first step to personal growth. This ending checks off pretty much all the boxes for me in terms of wrapping up the story, themes, and the impression it left on me. It might be my second favorite ending in the series, but now we move on to my favorite ending. You are left with the biggest ultimatum in Persona 3. The arrival of Nyx is inevitable. Her appearance means certain doom, and she is supposedly unstoppable. In the run-of-the-mill RPG, those things wouldn't exactly mean much. But Persona 3 has always made fighting out to be a serious danger. There are risks to fighting, and you can die, as certain people have. So, up against an otherworldly being, yeah, those are not good odds. Your options are either to spend every waking moment dwelling on your imminent doom, or to forget everything and essentially enjoy the remaining days of your life blissfully until it just happens. It'll be an instantaneous death, the most painless way to go out. You are choosing how you will die. Everyone is unsure what they want to do for a while, but eventually come to their own resolutions, and unanimously agree that they don't want to forget anything they went through. They would rather fight to preserve the life that they fought for. Ryoji, whose job is to essentially usher in Nyx, puts up a good effort to not fight her. You can tell he genuinely cares. He was your classmate up until this point after all. He respects your decision though, and tells you when and where you will have to confront Nyx. The very next day marks the start of the new year. Everyone's hoping for the year to be better than the last. But there's only one thing standing in the way of that. Well, a couple things actually. You'll notice the town being littered with posters and is vandalized with this ominous cult symbol. You're not the only one who's heard about Nyx. In fact, these people are straight up welcoming the arrival of Nyx. Even on the night when Nyx comes down to Earth, some people are thrilled by it. Even after giving it your best against a 1-hour boss fight, your best efforts weren't enough. Nyx's avatar even commends your persistence, and even theorizes that if more people were like them, then maybe the fall could have been stopped. And yes, the fight actually is an hour long if you're around normal levels. The game really did want you to think this fight was impossible, and I think it fits well narratively. When it feels like all hope is lost, your mind wanders into the Velvet Room for a moment. Igor tells you to call upon the power of the bonds you formed over the course of the game. The social links that you maxed out will call out to you, saying how much you've impacted their lives for the better. You basically have to save everyone now. How could you not after hearing that? And as cheesy and overdone as the friends giving you the strength to beat the boss thing is, there's a reason it's overdone, and it's still as satisfying as ever here. After achieving the unthinkable, everything returns to normal, and over time, everyone's memories of everything related to the Dark Hour fade away. But before confronting Nyx, everyone made a promise to meet again after the battle, even if they forget. They promised to meet on an important day that they couldn't possibly forget. That day is graduation day. Only Aigis, and implicitly the protagonist, remembered this promise at first, but eventually everyone comes around and ditch the graduation ceremony to fulfill their promise. As you and Aigis are wrapping things up and having your closing words, everyone manages to catch up right at the last second as the protagonist starts to lose consciousness. This is easily my favorite ending of the modern Persona games. The mood of the impending doom followed by the determination to hopefulness, and finally relief reaches higher levels than most other RPGs in my experience, in all three areas. Something that a lot of other games don't really press hard enough is the actual risk in fighting. When presenting world-ending threats to our heroes, Persona 3 does a much better job making them aware of their mortality. In a lot of other cases, the story doesn't even try to dissuade you or make you doubt that the main cast will come out victorious. You're simply presented with a threat and are told what will happen if it's not stopped. They don't ever tell you what happens to you, or rather, they don't dwell on it as much and let it sink in. Other times, they might replace death with saying they'll fade away or cease to exist. I felt actual genuine relief after everything was over, and everything was seemingly okay. Seemingly. So, the protagonist dies at the end? I actually didn't catch that when I first played it because I was so enthralled with everything else I just mentioned about this ending. I think it was meant to be intentionally ambiguous, at least before the answer became a thing. And I liked that. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I feel as though the ending could work either way. What mattered to me the most was that they overcame all the odds and kept their promise. It's not done in an immediately celebratory way like in other endings. You know that they're going to remember, but just really eager for it to happen. I guess this is largely due to the attachment I grew to the characters over the course of the game, and I guess that's just a testament to how integral the entire experience was. Everything down to your last words with the people you've met over the game. It's not so much that he has to die here, but more like, even if he were to die here, right now at this very moment, it still would have all been worth it. Because this is the life he wanted to fight for, and was able to see it to the very end. Persona 3 FES added an epilogue campaign titled The Answer. In this post-game content of sorts, it's basically confirmed that the protagonist did in fact die at the end of Persona 3. The question is, why? For most of the answer, the characters revisit their pasts and their reasons for fighting against the shadows to begin with. The boss at the end of the Abyss of Time, trapping our characters in this time loop, takes the shape of the deceased protagonist, representing their inability to move on from their loss, or from the very struggle that gave their lives meaning before. You really don't get an answer to why the protagonist died until the very end. You are given one last vision from the past. It's the very moment where the protagonist sealed away Nyx, but you find out that this was done at the cost of his life. His will and desire to keep the promise to meet again is what kept him alive until the last moment. However, the Great Seal was not actually meant to keep Nyx from coming. It was actually meant to prevent humanity from reaching it. Remember the Snow Queen ending in Persona 1? Eternal night will fall again. so long as people seek to turn hope into despair. People's desire for Nyx is what brought her upon them. To be clear, I'm pretty sure this is not the same Nyx from Persona 1. I mean this completely figuratively. This desire takes the form of a monster named Erebus, who is also the final boss, but not nearly as insane as Nyx. Afterwards, the crew is finally able to move forward with time, both figuratively and literally. They may not be able to get their friend back, but they can at least return the favor by living the best lives that they can, and easing his burden by doing what they can to help humanity let go of their despair and desire for death. If the journey's ending was about appreciating the presence of people and finding your own meaning in life, then the answer's ending is about how you won't always be able to keep those things. People can leave your life, and sometimes the meaning you've dedicated your life to won't last forever. But it's never too late to find a new reason to live. Even if the thing that made your life meaningful to you is gone, there will always be things in life to look forward to and enjoy. When I graduated with my bachelor's during the beginning of the pandemic, I thought the best years of my life had passed me. All that's left to do is work for 50 plus years until you're no longer useful to society anymore, and you're given the sweet relief of retirement, basically just waiting to die. I know that's cynical, but that's truly the mindset that I had for about a year. It was only through making these videos and meeting all these great people that made me realize there are still so many things left I can experience. Something as simple as trying out this new hobby expanded my horizons and motivated me to get through the day. I have a much higher opinion of this ending now than I did when I first played the answer. Almost like I had to grow as a person to really understand it. And now, I look forward to brand new days. Persona 4's best ending is deceptively easy to miss. When you finish saying goodbye to all your social link characters before leaving Inaba, the game will give you the option to just go home and then you leave the next day. The ending is mostly the same as the true ending, even showing you the same final FMV scene. Your friends see you off as you board the train, and I mean they see you all the way off. They chase you to the end of the platform, saying how the distance between you will never break your friendship. This is an incomplete ending. What you actually have to do is return to the food court after talking to all your social links. Then it'll click in everyone's head that despite preventing the fog from consuming Inaba, they still never actually found out what the TV world is or where the Midnight Channel rumors came from. After doing some investigating around town, you're given the hint to try and find the first person you met in town. Other than Dojima and Nanako, of course. Yeah, it was the freaking gas station attendant who turned out to have orchestrated this whole game. Then you're given one last dungeon to complete, and then the true final boss, Izanami. She questions why you seek out the truth so vehemently. Like, did you really have to go this far? Then she goes on a tirade about how people would rather hold on to lies that make them comfortable than come to terms with reality. The Midnight Channel was literally a window into people's minds. The images displayed were the people's perception of the prominent figures appearing on the news. It's entirely possible that the reason why everyone's shadows were so exacerbated was partially because they were reflecting the way the public saw them. It actually works effectively as social commentary. But then after the boss, they play out the exact same sequence as Persona 3. I am not joking. The protagonist doesn't die this time though. Instead, the TV world, the world of people's minds, is restored to its former beauty. Within the deep fog, the minds of humans are actually beautiful. It's the uncertainty and hesitation to seek out the truth that made it seem eerie. Normally, after the protagonist leaves, the game ends there. However, if you save Marie and completed her dungeon, you will get an epilogue taking place a few months after the end of Persona 4. You see how Inaba has transformed for the better. Namatame goes back into politics and is actually able to earn the support of some people. The shopping district and Junes are on good terms now, and are confident that the district will be able to flourish again. And most importantly, you get to visit your friends and see them again. Everyone's appearance has changed, but the most noteworthy one is Kanji, who no longer wears punk attire to compensate for his lack of traditional manliness. And Teddy is clearly wearing a bra underneath his shirt. Cross-dressing got him into some things, I see. Marie appears on the news and is clearly manipulating the weather with her powers for a living, because she's just able to do that apparently. Everyone prepares a lunch for the protagonist, and the game ends on them giving him a big welcome back. This ending is fine. I like the message they were trying to push with Izanami, and the scene where the fog clears inside the TV world. The way you get this ending is also pretty clever, admittedly. Unfortunately, the modern day where every tidbit of info on this game is on the internet, the Izanami twist has just lost its charm over time. The departure scene was okay, I guess, but it didn't hit nearly as hard as anything else we've seen so far. At least, not in my opinion. The golden epilogue didn't really change my opinion. My thoughts are more or less the same. It's fine, but not the most impactful or moving. I already said most of what I had to say in my Persona 4 retrospective. Watch, like, and comment, by the way. And while we're on that topic, I just want to thank everyone for the support on the last video. It's my best performing video to date right after one of my worst performing videos. To make sure you guys are all in the loop, videos do much better if a large number of your regular viewers are watching. I know that might sound obvious, but inactive subscribers are more common than you think. I'm not holding any of you responsible for how my videos perform. I'm not entitled to any of your time or clicks. I recognize that ultimately, it's just up to me to make stuff that people want to watch, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just have to try again next time. I simply want to inform you on how it works for those who want to do more to help. If that's not enough and you want to take it a step even further, consider taking a look at my Patreon. I won't request anything else other than you just check it out. And a special thanks to my current patrons. Oh boy, here comes the big one. The first requirement to get the good ending in Persona 5 is to make sure not to sell out your friends after getting arrested at Sai's palace. This will remind Joker to give Sai the cell phone on the table. This will ensure that when Sai passes Akechi, the traitor and true culprit behind the mental shutdowns, Futaba can activate the Metaverse app to remotely bring Akechi into the cognitive world. This results in Akechi killing the cognitive version of Joker instead of the real one. Futaba then anonymously contacts Sai through the cell phone and convinces her to return Joker home. Futaba also planted a bug in Akechi's phone without him realizing it, allowing her to get Akechi out of the metaverse after thinking he killed Joker. She also eavesdrops on Akechi's conversation with Shido, who was using the metaverse to gain political power. So now you have your next target and another palace to clear. You clear the palace and it's all good, right? No. Even after Shido confesses his crimes, people just don't really seem to care. Just like real politics. We'll skip ahead a bit to when they reach the depths of Mementos and are defeated by the Holy Grail. They seemingly return back to the real world, but in reality, the cognitive world is merging with the physical world. The Phantom Thieves fade away from existence. You then reappear in the Velvet Room, and Igor decides that you don't deserve to live anymore because... This is the part where the twins merge back into Lavenza and remember that the Igor we've spent the game with is a fake. This is also the part where Igor offers to return the world to its original state, but with the Phantom Thieves in the public's favor again. The correct answer is to turn him down, obviously. Instead of killing you on the spot, though, he's just like, oh, whatever, I don't care. Then he leaves. Okay. Real Igor comes back too. You then traverse through the rest of the Velvet Room cells to retrieve your party members, and return to the distorted world. You face off with the true enemy, Yaldabaoth, and he chastises humanity for not wanting to think for themselves. Then you beat him, except you don't. Then everyone cheers for you, and you awaken to your ultimate persona to kill the boss. Wait, I think we've been here before. The world returns to normal, and Morgana goes to Metaverse Heaven or whatever. The Metaverse and Meta app are gone. Your friends all return home, but then Sai approaches you. She tells Joker that she needs him to present himself as a witness in order to prove Shido guilty. However, the police don't want to be shown up by the Phantom Thieves, and may likely fabricate a crime to blame on them. The only other witness is Akechi, but he's currently missing and no one really knows what happened to him at Shido's palace. So to protect his teammates, Joker has to turn himself into the police. Joker gets stuck in solitary confinement. Joker's friends are very reasonably upset about this and decide that they won't just accept this. But they don't have the metaverse anymore. They'll have to do this all on their own. New Year's Eve, they start their plan to get Joker out of Juvenile Hall. All of Joker's confidants provide testimony for his innocence. It takes about a month, but they were able to do it. You return home to a warm welcome from your friends. And Morgana's alive because time passes and Joker's probation is up. After saying goodbye to all your confidants, you're ready to get going the next day. Sojiro looks at the journal he gave you at the beginning of the game and gets a bit teary-eyed. On your way out of town, your friends offer to drive you home. Despite Joker's innocence being proven, there are still people out for his blood. So Morgana pulls a cheeky move and steals a car part from them while they weren't looking. They then enjoy each other's company one last time on the road. It almost seems too good to be true for them. But for once in their lives, they feel truly free.
If you want to change the world, all you have to do is just look at it differently. Am I right? And that is what aesthetics are. Yeah.
The lead up to this one was a bit weak, and the final battle is a bit too similar to Persona 4. But everything after that is honestly some pretty powerful stuff. I like how the Phantom Thieves had to overcome an injustice not only without their leader, but also without the power they've been relying on to force a change. I thought that was a very meaningful way to show the weight of what they just did. It starts off being a we save the world but at what cost scenario. Then our heroes manage to claw their way out. Even after being proven innocent, the stigma of being a criminal will still follow Joker. The way it approached everything at the very end felt more realistic. The gang even question if they're dreaming because they've never felt this free in their lives before. The entire game you saw the kinds of struggles that tied these people down, and now they've achieved true freedom. Despite starting off kind of iffy, the game ends on a banger. But what if things played out differently? The requirements for this are simple. Reach rank 9 of Maruki's Confidant before November. You will then max it out on November 18th. Just as a quick refresher, Maruki was hired as Shujin Academy's counselor after the scandal with Kamoshida. The mental well-being of our students is very important to us, and yada yada yada. During your first counseling session, Maruki asks you to help him with a research paper he's working on about people's metaphorical hearts. Essentially, he dissects your mind to learn more about how people cope with emotional pain. At the end of the Confidant, Maruki has finished his research and reveals that he knows you're a Phantom Thief. It turns out Maruki has been researching cognitive science since grad school in an attempt to directly interact with people's cognitions and mend their pain and suffering. After gaining the suspicion that you were a Phantom Thief, he felt that through talking to you, he could gain more evidence for his hypothesis. Maruki, of course, has no intention of turning you in since he owes you so much. He even gives the thieves permission to change his heart if they're skeptical. Nonetheless, it seems as though Maruki only intends to help people with his research, so everyone's on good terms here. Everything plays out normally until Sai asks you to turn yourself in like normal. To both of their surprise, Akechi appears out of the blue and offers to testify in Joker's place. If the police have custody of the true perpetrator, there will be no reason whatsoever to pin it on the Phantom Thieves. Oh, and Morgana comes back early too. So, that was convenient. Everything seems great until New Year's arrives and things seem really off. Like, dead people are alive now. You, Akechi, and Yoshizawa team up to investigate what's going on, and eventually everyone else comes around too. So this is what Maruki's research went towards, directly changing the cognition of everyone so they can live out their ideal reality. I already went over in my last video what would happen if you accepted the current reality, so let's just skip ahead to what you're supposed to do. You must make it to the end of Maruki's palace before February 3rd. Then reject his offer to stay in the ideal reality. After defeating him, Maruki will pull Joker down as everyone tries to make their escape. Not to try and stop him, but to vent out his frustrations in one last fistfight, as the cognitive world and their powers are disappearing right before them. Throughout Maruki's palace, you learn that he suffered through the trauma of essentially losing his loved one. Not through death, but through wiping away her memory to erase her trauma. All he really wanted was to end suffering in the world, but our heroes chose to face reality, because the suffering they went through is what made them who they are today. The painful memories are just as integral to someone as their good memories, and plenty of good things did happen as a result of those tragedies. That doesn't excuse them, but that doesn't devalue the good things that resulted from them either. As the palace disappears and reality turns to normal, everyone makes it back except Joker. Reality shifting back means that the events of the original Persona 5 played out as they did. This means Akechi is gone and couldn't take Joker's place, and Joker has been in juvenile confinement since Christmas. Once again, all of Joker's confidants pitch in to get him released, and it works. The game kind of deceives you into thinking it'll end off the same way, but that's not the case at all. Instead of driving you home, your friends divert the government agents while Maruki drives you to the station. Maruki has decided to start over after basically losing his life's work, but he's content with it and will get back up no matter how hard he falls. You have a brief mandatory run-in with Sumire and board the train. As the credits roll, you see everyone moving forward in life, working towards their own happiness. After the credits, the game seems to hint that Akechi might still be okay, and Joker's phantom appearance briefly appears in his reflection. There's a lot to unpack here, but what I'll focus on primarily is the actual ending rather than what led up to it. The part where Joker's confidants come together to get him released doesn't really hit as hard as the first version of the ending. I think the biggest factor in that is that it's done on much shorter notice than before. In the original ending, it took them a whole month to get results. Here, it's done in a mere 10 days. I like how the animators went out of their way to completely recreate the first part of the original ending with minor differences. Stuff like Joker wearing his glasses, Yusuke already being in the van this time, how An catches the two guys tailing them instead of Ryuji. Morgana was also in Joker's bag rather than fixing the van, so they couldn't use the same method of ditching the spies. I did find it a little disappointing how Joker's friends couldn't go the whole way home with him this time, but they had to shove a Maruki and Sumire appearance in there somewhere. I love the stark contrast between the bad ending's display of everyone enjoying their ideal lives, with this ending showing everyone putting in the work to make their current lives better. I'm neutral towards the possibility that Akechi is alive. It's probably one of those things that will forever be left hanging, like whether Elizabeth will be able to free the Persona 3 protagonist from the Great Seal. Looking back at both the original and Royal endings, I like both of them a lot more than I initially did. I prefer parts of both of them over each other, but I think ultimately, I lean a bit more towards the original. Don't get me wrong, Royal's ending is still good. Ultimately, both of them share one thing in common. Our heroes are able to attain true freedom. the freedom from the struggles that once plagued them, as well as the freedom to keep fighting for a better life. Okay, that was a good recording session. Let's see how much time we clocked in. Wait, seriously? How did this video end up being longer than the last one? There are more bad endings than there are good ones. Well, I guess that's just a testament to how much there is to talk about with these games. I never initially intended to make this video, but I'm glad I did. I think Persona has always done a good job with how it handles its themes and subtext. This project was a good reevaluation for myself to seek out the good in each game. I'm optimistic for whatever the Persona series has in store for us next. If I had to pick a few favorites, I'd say Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, Persona 3, and Persona 5. Even if Yaldabaoth was a bit too much like Izanami. The one thing all of these endings have in common is that no matter what kind of unfair adversities you're facing, it ultimately comes down to you to take control of your own destiny. You'll never have to walk that path alone, and the games straight up encourage you to allow others to help ease your burden. However, the one who must take the initiative to change the course of your life is you.